The ice shattered beneath her paws. Joey plunged into freezing darkness with a splash that cracked the silence. Screams tore through the Arctic air as one by one her cubs slipped beneath the brittle surface. Laura's desperate fight for survival had only just begun, but what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. On the vast, frozen expanse of the Arctic, dawn painted the sky with a pale glow, but the biting cold was relentless. Laura, a weathered polar bear mother whose thick fur was dusted with frost, moved steadily across the fragile ice. Every muscle in her powerful frame was tuned to survival, every instinct sharpened by years of hardship. Her three cubs, Joey, Lily, and Max, trudged eagerly beside her, their soft paws barely making a sound as they explored the glittering, dangerous landscape. Laura's motivation was clear and primal: protect her offspring at all costs. Having endured the loss of her own siblings years ago to the merciless cracking of ice, she bore the weight of survival not just for herself, but for this next generation. The Arctic was a merciless tutor, indifferent to innocence or youth. To Laura, the ice was both a pathway and a trap, a shifting, unpredictable skin that could betray them without warning. Each step she took was calculated, her paws pressing lightly yet firmly. She scanned the horizon and the uneven surface beneath her feet, wary of thin patches that might conceal deadly fractures. The cubs, too young to grasp the peril, were captivated by the white world, chasing shadows and sniffing the frigid air, their wide eyes shimmering with wonder and trust. Their playful antics stirred a quiet hope in Laura's heart, a hope that despite the ice's treachery, life could persist. For a moment the scene was almost serene, a family bound by instinct and love, navigating a frozen wilderness that few creatures dared to challenge. The cubs' fluffy white bodies blended with the snow, a moving mirage of innocence against the endless horizon of blue and white. To an unseen observer, this fragile life thriving amid relentless cold brought a surge of relief, a reminder that even here, in the harshest conditions, hope endured. Laura's gaze never wavered from the ground, though, especially as they neared a critical spot, a seal's breathing hole hidden beneath the thin ice. It was a vital source of food and survival for the family, but also a place where the ice was notoriously thin and unstable. Her heartbeat quickened, tension mounting beneath her composed exterior. The cubs' natural curiosity drew them closer, their youthful exuberance blinding them to the danger lurking below. The tension snapped in an instant. Beneath Joey, the smallest and most adventurous cub, the ice groaned, a sharp, glass-like fracture spreading outward in a heartbeat. The sudden crack shattered the fragile calm like an ominous drumbeat. Joey's small body teetered, the surface beneath him dissolving into jagged shards and freezing water. His startled cries pierced the frozen air, raw and desperate. Laura's world contracted into a single, terrible moment. Every ounce of her strength, every maternal instinct surged forward in a torrent of fierce protectiveness. The ice had betrayed them. Her cub was slipping through a deadly trap she had tried so hard to avoid. The cold water below was a merciless enemy, threatening to claim the life she had sworn to guard. Time seemed to slow for Laura. The ice cracked beneath her paws, tiny fractures racing toward her as she lunged, muscles coiled and eyes locked on Joey. Her motivation was no longer just hope. It was the raw, consuming need to save her cub, to wrest him back from the jaws of death itself. Her breath steamed in the air, sharp and ragged, mingling with the desperate cries that echoed across the frozen wasteland. Her other cubs stood frozen, eyes wide with fear and confusion, their playful innocence shattered by the sudden terror. Laura's heart hammered, a fierce tide of emotion crashing between fear and determination. The Arctic was unforgiving, but in this moment, it was her love that would define the fate of her family. The ice beneath Joey continued to crumble, the cold water swirling like a dark abyss ready to swallow him whole. Laura's claws scraped desperately at the slippery surface, every second a battle against the relentless cold and the cruel fracture spreading beneath them. This was no longer just a journey across frozen lands. It was a fight for survival, a mother's desperate stand against nature's brutal indifference. As she strained every fiber of her being to reach him, the harsh Arctic morning bore witness to a story of raw courage and unyielding hope, one that would not end here. Shock froze the world into a suspended moment as Joey vanished beneath the fractured ice with a splash that shattered the fragile calm like glass breaking in slow motion. The other cubs' screams, a chorus of raw, piercing terror, pierced the brittle Arctic silence, their high-pitched cries echoing across the frozen wasteland and threading through the icy air like a desperate plea. Laura's heart thundered in her chest, a chaotic drumbeat of fear, rage, and instinctual fury that surged through her veins. It was not anger at her cub. No, Joey was innocent, helpless, but a seething, bitter hatred for the merciless environment that betrayed them so cruelly. The ice, once a pathway of survival, had become a trap, a lethal snare waiting to claim her family. Without hesitation, without a moment's pause, Laura launched herself toward the shattered edge. Her heavy paws struck the fragile ice with brutal force, sending splinters and shards scattering like deadly rain. Each impact was a battle against a shifting enemy, the brittle surface groaning ominously beneath her weight, threatening to give way at any second. Her claws found purchase on the slick, cracking edges as she lunged into the freezing water, the shock of icy cold stealing her breath and stealing warmth from her bones like a cruel thief. The water gripped her with the cold death of the Arctic, relentless and unforgiving, but Laura's resolve burned hotter than any winter. Her muscles, taut and powerful, rippled beneath her fur as she dragged Joey upward, teeth clenched, eyes blazing with fierce determination. But the ice was no ally. Every desperate pull, every frantic clawing at the surface sent shockwaves of fracture rippling outward, cracks spiderwebbing across the snow-white expanse like the spread of a disease. The once solid ground was dissolving beneath her, betraying her trust with every trembling inch. The water was a cruel undertow, sucking strength from her limbs and numbing her spirit, threatening to pull her into its dark, icy maw. The cold wasn't just physical, it gnawed at her, a creeping shadow sinking deep into her bones, dragging her down into despair. And then horror compounded. One by one, her other cubs faltered. Innocence turned to terror as Lily slipped into the icy trap, followed by Max moments later. Each plunge was a dagger to Laura's heart, a brutal reminder of the fragile line between life and death in this frozen wasteland. The ice beneath them cracked wider, the thaw eating away at their sanctuary, turning the world into a patchwork of treacherous slivers floating on a frozen sea of danger. Despair wrapped itself around Laura's soul, thick and suffocating, but it was tempered by a deepening primal fire, a fierce, unyielding motivation not just to survive, but to fight back with every ounce of her being. The battle for her cubs became a war against time and nature's merciless hand. Laura's body screamed in protest, muscles trembling from exhaustion, lungs burning as she fought for every breath. Yet she refused to yield. Claws scraped furiously against the ice's fragile edge, teeth gnawed and tore through thin sheets, and paws battered with relentless fury. She bit into the jagged ice with raw desperation, breaking through the treacherous crust to forge a patch of safety, however small, a fragile island in a sea of broken ice and frigid water. Cold seeped relentlessly into her fur and flesh, creeping like an invasive frostbite, sapping strength and hope with cruel precision. Her legs trembled beneath her weight, joints stiffened by the merciless chill, but her spirit held fast, a beacon of unbreakable will amidst the chaos. Her breath came in sharp, ragged gasps, steam rising like smoke from her nostrils as she fought not only the ice, but the creeping paralysis of cold and fatigue. Every heartbeat echoed with the raw urgency of survival. Every motion was a testament to a mother's love, fierce and boundless. The scene outside the ice's cruel trap was silent, but for the muffled sounds of struggle, a frozen tableau of desperation and courage. Far from the Arctic wasteland, hearts stirred with compassion and awe at the mother's unrelenting fight, an echo of resilience against overwhelming odds. The stark contrast of her raw, elemental struggle against nature's indifferent cruelty held a haunting beauty, the fragile yet fierce fight for life against a world where survival was never guaranteed. In the desperate hours under the gray sky, Laura's motivation transcended hope. It became pure, unfiltered survival. It was a battle waged in silence and cold, etched into the very ice that threatened to consume her. No concession, no surrender, only the relentless will of a mother who would fight beyond exhaustion, beyond pain, beyond despair, until every last cub was safe or the frozen world claimed her too. The Arctic's frozen silence shattered like fragile glass, a sudden roar tearing through the vast emptiness. From the horizon emerged the hulking silhouette of an icebreaker, its massive hull grinding slowly but steadily through the jagged, treacherous ice floes. Against the stark white and endless blue, the ship's arrival was surreal, a metallic beast born of human ingenuity, gliding through nature's frozen fortress with purpose and power. The sound, distant at first, grew into a commanding presence that filled the air with a strange promise: salvation. For Laura, every aching muscle trembling from the icy water and desperate struggle, the noise was a faint, almost unbelievable flicker of hope. She barely dared to lift her head, the cold seeping deeper into her bones, every breath a burning shard slicing through her lungs. The frozen wasteland had been an unyielding adversary, a brutal force intent on claiming her family. But now, something foreign yet familiar intruded, a force that could tip the scales between life and death. She had fought the ice with everything she had, clawing and biting, driven by primal love and desperate will. Now, that fierce battle had drawn the attention of unseen watchers. The researchers aboard the icebreaker had been monitoring the fragile Arctic ecosystem for weeks, their mission both scientific and urgent. Satellite feeds and remote sensors had picked up the growing instability in this area, but nothing could have prepared them for the live distress signals, audio bursts from the field microphones, faint cries that sparked an emergency response. Their vessel, equipped with cutting-edge technology designed to navigate the most perilous ice conditions, pushed forward without hesitation, engines roaring, cutting a path through the frozen chaos. The team's coordinated efficiency was awe-inspiring. As the ship approached the precarious site, they deployed heated cutting tools, specialized equipment designed to melt and stabilize dangerously thin ice without fracturing it further. The hiss of steam and the sharp slice of metal against ice brought a new, vivid soundscape to the Arctic's cold monotony. Workers in heavy gear moved quickly and precisely, their every action focused on rescuing the trapped cubs and their exhausted mother. Lines of thick rope unfurled, thrown with practiced accuracy, looping under the fragile platforms of ice where the animals clung precariously. Each moment was charged with electric tension. The cubs, trembling violently from cold shock, were gently but urgently pulled from the freezing waters. Their fur, soaked and clinging in sodden clumps, glistened under the pale sunlight as they were lifted to safety. The air was filled with a mixture of soft whimpers and cautious relief, the young bears too numb to fully understand the magnitude of their rescue. Yet, even in their fragile state, there was a flicker of resilience, life refusing to yield despite the overwhelming odds. Laura, barely able to stand, felt the invisible thread of connection to her cubs pull taut. The sight of her babies lifted from the icy grip revived a flicker of energy she thought lost forever. She nuzzled each of them with a raw tenderness, her muzzle wet with tears, mingling with melting snowflakes. The pain, the exhaustion, the terror, all dissolved momentarily into a single surge of fierce maternal love, amplified now by the undeniable presence of human intervention. This was a union of two worlds, the harsh brutality of nature met with the unwavering resolve of human compassion and technology. The researchers, moved beyond mere duty, worked tirelessly to ensure the safety of the bears. They wrapped the cubs in thermal blankets, spoke in gentle tones, and carefully prepared the area to prevent further breaks. Their knowledge, honed by years of experience and driven by a profound respect for the fragile ecosystem, transformed what had seemed an inevitable tragedy into a living miracle. As the icebreaker pulled away, its silhouette fading into the misty horizon, the scene remained etched in time, a moment of harmony between human determination and wild survival instinct. Laura's motivation, unyielding throughout, had become a beacon not just of maternal devotion, but of hope itself. Her struggle embodied the fierce love that pulses through all life, and the rescue underscored a universal truth. Even in the most desolate, unforgiving places, hope can emerge from the shadows in the form of unexpected allies. The Arctic wind carried away the echoes of the rescue, but the story remained, a testament to resilience, to the extraordinary bonds forged in the crucible of survival. It was a reminder that sometimes salvation comes from beyond the frozen horizon, delivered by those who dare to venture into the wild with empathy and resolve. And in that moment, against all odds, life was reclaimed, fragile, fierce, and forever intertwined.